the Hidden World of Women podcast, brought to you by Women's Health and Wellbeing Services. My name is Melanie Robson. Today I have a wonderful guest speaker. Her name is Marie Mercier. She's from Belgium, I believe. Hope I've got that right, yes. And I know Marie through the sexology studies that we've been doing. She's just completed her Masters of Sexology. And sexology, for those that don't know, is the scientific study of human sexuality. And yes, it's a real thing. You can actually study that. And Marie's here today to talk about a really important but I think really neglected topic for women, and that is sex and pleasure after birth. And she's just completed her master's thesis on the topic. And she's kindly volunteered to come on today and talk about all things sexual and fun after birth, which sometimes those two don't seem to go together kind of thing. So it'd be awesome to have you on today. So welcome, Marie.
Hello.
Hi.
Thank you for inviting me in your podcast.
You're
It's such
welcome.
a great honor. Thank you so much.
No worries. Yeah. So, what I guess I'll ask by what got you interested in this topic. You know, how did you? I don't know. Come to think, I'm going to do my whole thesis on this and dedicate yourself to it.
Yeah, that's a good question, because at the beginning I started to study the Master of Sexology for something else. So I never think about women's sexual health, and especially during the pregnancy and the postpartum period. So actually, I remember that during the first semester of my master, I study women's sexual health, reproductive health, and everything. And I thought, actually, we never talk about sexuality during pregnancy and after childbirth. And we know how to make babies. So we know that naturally we should have sex and to make babies. But then we don't know anything about how our body changed during the pregnancy, and how the method of birth can affect in a positive or in a negative way your vulva, your vagina, your body. So I started to think about that, and I find like some interesting studies, not a lot to be honest, but some interesting ones. And I was like, maybe it could be a very nice topic for research. And because I wanted to, I thought about the qualitative research. Actually, I thought, it could be like a nice topic to talk with women and to understand a little bit more about how their mind, how their body change during that process, and how they feel after postpartum. And so that's
awesome. Interesting that you didn't find that there's actually not a lot of research out there. Like, isn't that shocking? I find that quite disturbing, really. Yeah.
And especially not a lot in qualitative research. So when I talk about qualitative, that's mean interviewing people, like trying to understand the experience via their own life and their own process. So there is not a lot. It's more like statistics, so with numbers. So which is very important as well, because we need both. But sometimes we need maybe to talk about a little bit deeper to understand more than just having numbers and
the quantitative. It certainly has a an important place. But I think too with women, and I guess that's the point of doing this podcast as well, the conversations, talking with women, and there's so much depth and layers and so much stuff that isn't talked about but wants to be talked about, needs to be talked about. And it's so much more richer, I think, when you can have those conversations with women, especially around those really personal topics that are so important, because they're still, sexuality is still, just because you're a mother doesn't mean you're devoid of sex and sexual desire, and like you said, there might have been some issues certainly during the birth. I'm sure you might have found that, I'm not sure, and then how to sort of reconcile that after, and the changes and all this kinds of stuff. So it's just so important. It's stunning that we don't So it's exciting that
Yeah.
really that you're doing some research in the area and then wanting to kind of
Thank you.
yeah.
Yeah, no, and I was thinking as well, for example, we with statistics, it's like we tell you, okay, for example, 80% have experienced, I don't know, vaginal dryness. It's I'm just inviting now the
Sure.
number, but
Yep.
then we don't know why. We don't know which kind of factors can influence that, or during which period that women had that. So maybe, yeah, during the few months, but we would like to know maybe more about the experience of the pregnancy and the childbirth. Maybe she had like a trauma, something happened, and hormonally as well. So yeah, that's why it was important. I preferred to interview women and to try to understand like a little bit deeper the experience and what they think about that. And
were women really keen to talk about this topic with you? How did you find
I struggled a little bit to find participants, but yeah, finally I found some who were like open to talk about it, and because it was anonymous as well. So for example, now I'm going to talk about my thesis, but I will never give names, and it's very anonymous. Yeah. So
yeah. Nice. It kind of provides a bit of safety there if you can be anonymous.
Yes.
If you're a little bit anxious about the topic, but you want to go there and you don't. You're like, what if people hear me or see me? Sure. So what? Yeah, you go.
Yeah, no, I was going. Some of them were like interesting in all these things, or were like professionals as well, and they wanted to know a little bit more about it.
Yeah,
because they realized after having the first baby that they didn't know anything about that, and they were like, some of them were working in a health.
Wow.
Like a public health, yeah.
So there's even, so it sounds like you're saying there's even not much information out there just generally, post-birth. Usually you get your little, what is it, pack about, all the health checks for your baby that you've got to have and, information on breastfeeding and all that kinds of stuff. But it sounds like there wasn't much. I mean, I had my child 16 years ago and there wasn't much then. And it sounds like there's still not much talk now, or if you go to the child health nurse or any kind of postpartum support, really does make me wonder then if there's still nothing out there,
No, well, according to my participants, because I'm not a mom yet, so I cannot tell you there is no information, but according to them, it's more about breastfeeding, more about the baby's health, more about depression postpartum, which is very important as well. But is very focused on different fields, but not sexuality.
Cool. So what did you find in your research? Do you want to dive into your thesis?
You have time to
go for it. Me. I'm really interested. It's a really exciting topic. I'd really love to, for sure. And I think for many women. So go for your life. Go for your life.
Okay. Thank you. So firstly, I would like to say that the 12 women that I interviewed were in a heterosexual relationship. So I just wanted to point that to highlight that point, because I think it's important, because obviously I'm going to talk about women, what they feel in their body. So I think many women can identify themselves with my results, but as well, for example, low sexual desire, low sexual interest can change from a relationship to another. So it depends as well on your sexual orientation. But firstly, if I wanted to share my professional expertise today, it's because I believe that sexuality is an important part of women's health, and periods such as pregnancy, childbirth, and postpartum are significant events that may modify women's health, and thus may affect their sexual function as well. Definitely, so during these periods, women's sexuality may be affected by different changes, such as emotional, physical, psychological, hormonal, and relational. So studies have shown that an impairment of women's sexual function may affect the quality of life and well-being. So that's why I think it's very important to talk about sexual health during pregnancy, and even before pregnancy, when we think about that, when we think to have babies as well. So
yeah, for sure.
For example, different studies have shown that between 25% to 91% of women are subject to experience sexual issues.
Wow.
So that's
25
huge.
to 91%. Is that what you
Yeah.
said? Gee.
So I took different studies, like
Yep.
statistic studies between 2009 to 2018. So
Yep.
obviously the numbers have changed, and
Yep.
it's just numbers as well. It's statistics. So that means that it's not all women. It's just representative of,
Sure.
like a
Yep.
number of women, but it's huge. So that's why it's very important to maybe make new research about it and to try to talk about sexual health with anyone, like any individual who want to be a parent, actually.
Definitely.
So when I talk about sexual issues, this refers to low sexual desire, difficulties reaching orgasm, pain during sexual intercourse, vaginal dryness, and difficulties being sexually aroused. So studies have reported that the period between childbirth and 6 months period are the most critical time for sexual changes in women's sexual functioning. So in my study, 10 women over 12 were at 6 months postpartum, and 9 of those 10 women reported that a lack of sexual desire, and one of them reported she had not yet resumed sexual activity with her partner, in part due to a lack of sexual desire. So over 12 women, like 10 reported that they didn't feel any sexual desire after childbirth, and they obviously for different reasons, and we will see which kind of reason were there, but so it's quite huge, and it's important to talk about it.
And so because if you're at a mother's group, the vast majority, we would therefore extrapolate and generalize that most of them are not feeling any kind of desire or anything like that, but no one's kind of talking about it in that room, say.
Nobody will talk about that, because firstly it's like a personal
yes,
topic,
it is.
and then they think maybe I am the only one, and maybe it's not normal, and things like that. So nobody really want to talk about it. And
but they're all kind of, chances are they're all experiencing the same thing.
Just in my research, 10 women told that, and there is other research. One was done in Australia in 2015, and the authors reported that the first 5 months after childbirth was considered as a high risk period for postpartum women to experience sexual issues. So they reported that 81% and 52% of postpartum women experience sexual desire disorder and sexual arousal disorder, respectively.
Wow.
It's huge. 81% of sexual desire disorder.
Yeah, right. So it's actually sort of fallen into the disorder category. It's not just a bit of a dip in desire or something. They've actually...
that's the thing as well. When we talk about disorder, we have as well to see which there is criteria that we have to see if the women go in this kind of criteria. But so I'm talking in general, like more sexual issues. Because it's like something that can happen just during the postpartum, and then it will disappear with once the body come back to normal,
whatever that
parentheses.
A new normal for some. Right. So you're saying, so it sounds like your research really paralleled what sort of early, that kind of, with the 80% is similar to that 10 out of 12 that you found I'm not very good at maths, so I'm just kind of, well, but it
Yeah,
sounds.
no, but it's almost, yeah.
Yeah. Sure. So shocking, really, but not shocking. It's sort of, it is and it isn't, because I'm like, well, yeah, it is very hard. Everything's changed in, virtually every possible way, especially if it's your first baby. I think there's, there's so much going on in your body and your life and
That's
stuff
the
like
thing.
that. Yeah.
And and usually, sexual desire is something that at the same time it can be abstract. It's like it's very something individual. It's like how you define your own sexual desire as well. So obviously each woman had like her own experience, and they defined the sexual desire as they thought it was. But it's like something changed between the before pregnancy and after pregnancy. So usually, for example, there are like two psychologists, Brotto and Luria, who say it in one chapter in a book that low sexual desire and low sexual arousal leading to lack of interest in sexual activity are usually presented together in women who consult sex therapists. So all this low sexual desire, low sexual interest are all together, and a lot of women experience that, even without being pregnant or being like a first-time parent or whatever. It's like it's a huge sexual issue in a lot of women. So that's important to talk about it, just to know it, because at least you don't feel alone,
Yeah, exactly. And again, if no one's talking about it, then you think it's just you. And then we're so flooded with sexualized images generally through the media, let alone all the porn out there and stuff like that. And it can certainly make you question yourself and what's wrong with me. And then if you're in a relationship, whatever that relationship is, and then they want to have sex and you don't, and let alone the say complicating factor of then having had a baby. But you're right. I think there's certainly not enough discussion and awareness about that generally in the community for women and the different sort of shades of arousal and desire, and at different times of your life. And there's just we are, and again with this the name of the podcast being the hidden world of women, because there is all these kind of hidden aspects to us, frankly, which aren't talked about enough, and our bodies and our sexual identity and sexual self is just so important. I mean, that's probably, you and I agree on that. That's why we went and studied sexology, because we're like, this is such a fundamental part of who we are as humans, let alone as women. And sex, of course, leads to babies if you want it to. And what then? What happens after that? So,
exactly, it's that a lot. For example, in my research, all of them, all participants told me that they had a very positive relationship with their partner before pregnancy. And then after childbirth, during the postpartum period, they told me that they were like worried about their relationship, because they could feel like the fact that they experience sexual changes, like in that case, it was like negative sexual changes, because when we talk about sexual changes, it can be positive as well. And there is one study who showed that there are as well positive changes after birth, because women feel more empowered, and there is something that changes in your body, and you feel more like feminine, like more woman.
That makes sense.
So in my research, I wanted like to highlight the negative sexual changes to try to help healthcare providers to find as well solution to change a little bit the kind of visits, like medical visits, and the topic, and maybe to try to talk about a little bit more about sexual health. So my research is more focused on that, and I don't remember why I was going to say that.
That's okay.
Sorry.
But I think in terms of the medical profession or health professionals or allied health, like psychologists and stuff like that. I remember we covered some of this in our one of the units that we did, but just how it's so obviously it's so important for them to ask questions, but many don't. I think it was around menopause or something like that, or there might be a focus on some the physical, but not the full physical. If we're talking about the whole person, including how is your sex life, how is your relationship, how is your vagina, kind of thing, and not just have you had any tears, is that fine? It's like, how is that impacting your sex life and your relationship, because your relationship's already different after you have a baby. You've got to like kind of reconfigure things, and you're exhausted and all this kinds of stuff. But in terms of then, I think it'd be really interesting. I don't know if you found any research about the partner's experiences, of sex after the birth of certainly the first baby, and what it's like for them suddenly to have the tap turned off. That's a really crude metaphor, but and they're both probably really struggling in that. And I wonder many women talk about that for their partner. Did you find that? Or?
So I found some studies about, in heterosexual relationship, I found like different studies about men, but well, to be honest, I didn't focus on it, so I don't really remember. But what I remember, it was more like a statistic research about like the myth and the fears during pregnancy. Like, for example, can we have sexual intercourse during pregnancy? Because I'm scared to harm the baby or the fetus, or I'm scared about miscarriage, or I'm scared about starting the labor. This kind of myth around sexuality during pregnancy. And then it was like more question during the postpartum, like when can we resume sexual activity? This kind. It was more like that. But actually, that's a good point, because one of my participants told me that her partner had erection difficulty after childbirth. So during the postpartum period, they had and because he was scared about hurting her, or it was like all around the fact that we didn't go through in deep in that conversation, but I remember some details that it was more like about I think that partner was scared about hurting her partner, and he wasn't sure if it was okay, and because he can see as well his partner body has changed, and it's like there is a lot of impact. But it's interesting. We should as well to do like some research about couple and the second partner to know what they think. And
for sure. So what else did you, when you talked to the women, so what tell us.
So I asked as well some question during the pregnancy, how they feel. So usually, because we hear like, the first trimester is the worst because of morning sick and these kind of changes, and then the second trimester get better. And the third one is getting down again about sexuality. And what they said is like, the third trimester was the one which impacts more the sexuality, actually, for different reasons. Like, for example, just the physical reason, the physical factor, that the body change, and you can see your belly, you can imagine your baby moving in your belly, so you can already imagine the future baby, and so there is already like a attachment which was like built during the pregnancy, and so they felt like uncomfortable to have sexual activities during the third trimester for that. And as well, the partner saw as well the belly, and it was like
Yep.
a barrier, a physical
Physical barrier.
barrier
But also
for
it sounds
having
like you're,
sex. Yeah.
yeah, but it sounds interesting as the baby grows and there's an attachment and then you can sort of visualize it. But it made me think it's like there's a third person then in the room when you're having sex, and that's your child, and that's disturbing on some level, even though they're not born yet. It sounds like for many women and their partners too, that you found that they were like, yeah, this is getting a little weird because the baby's sort of here but not here. And I'm like, yeah, that makes so much sense, as well as the physical the physical barrier, like you were saying. Definitely.
And then as well, so there was that one, and as well the positions, the sexual positions, where started to be like more uncomfortable during the third trimester.
That makes sense. You've got to get very creative, I think.
We we should try. I don't know. I think there is like a book or something about like a Kama Sutra during pregnancy. No, it has to be.
Oh, I'm sure there is.
I think so. And if there is no book, we can try to think about that and to make a new book.
Sure, let's get on to that
for pregnant women.
That sounds like a great idea. Okay, so that's kind of interesting. That, I mean, and that makes sense. That the more pregnant, certainly the women that you talk to, the more pregnant they got, the more it affected their sex life, basically. Yeah.
But for example, again, obviously I studied a master in sexology, so I'm thinking a lot about that, and I'm thinking, okay. When we talk about that, it's more like we see sexuality as like sexual intercourse, so this kind of, but like more penetrative, like penis and vagina, and but sexuality, it's more than that. So actually, if I feel like we could as well say to those women who don't feel comfortable during the pregnancies that sexuality is not only penetration, is not just sexual intercourse, is more than that. It's like affection, is intimacy with their partner, is just being naked in the bed, and being close, and it's just that, just have like more intimacy, but there is no need to have sex like like we know what is it, like like penetration.
And that's it's I think that, and that's so such an important point generally, that I think it's still in society there's that narrow kind of definition of sex as being, like you said, penis and vagina, and that's it. And certainly when we try to do sex education with younger people, to talk about sex is so much more than that, and sexuality is so much more than that. And then there's all these layers of intimacy. And I was wondering too, did you talk to any of them about masturbation, like any self kind of sex? Did any of them go into that? Or in terms of, I was just thinking of their levels of arousal or desire, certainly being pregnant, because sometimes your hormones can make you like super horny, and other times you're like, just get away from me kind of thing. Did anyone talk about that, or after birth or anything?
No. So during pregnancy, maybe one was more like talking about masturbation, because it was something that in her relationship with her partner she was doing, like it was something they were like open to masturbation. But the other ones were more like talking about the I think the sex, like sexual intercourse, like I would like to say the classic one, but I don't want to. No, but they said that during the second trimester, some of them felt like more horny and more like they wanted more, but they felt like their sexual desire was quite higher than the trimester and the third one, which may be due to hormone changes, and because the baby is not yet very predominant, so it's like.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
So after that, so it was the very big point for pregnancy. It was more that the third trimester, we changed a lot in their sexual relationship. And then after birth, it was like more a lack of intimacy between the two partners. So they highlight that as a huge impact on their sexual relationship. And that's why I remember now why I was talking about negative sexual changes and with a relationship is that they told me that their relationship before pregnancy were positive, and now during the postpartum period they realized that the fact that they were like experiencing sexual changes in a negative way, and between parentheses, is like they felt like there was something was changing in their relationship, and they knew that their partner needed more intimacy and more closeness and more sexual activities than them. So they were worried about that, like they wanted to know and to try to find like solution to make sure that everyone everyone was okay in the relationship, you know.
Yeah, that makes so much sense. I was just the other day I did a live stream on our Facebook page, the Women's Health and Wellbeing Facebook page, about the birth of a mother, and I just basically rabbited on for an hour about, you know, there's the birth of the baby, first baby I'm talking about, but then with that is the birth of the mother and the birth of a father and these kinds of concepts really and constructs, and identity changes, but then how for many women you have to start sort of almost like trying to split yourself in a way, because you're taking care of the baby, obviously, and you've got to kind of park yourself to the side, but then you're very mindful, or not, depending on, you know, what's happening in the relationship, or if you're in a relationship, about the partner, and then how to kind of divide yourself and kind of give time or physical affection and attention to your partner, and the loss for the partner of you and loss of or parts of you in a way, and that kind of and the sexual relationship being part of that, and that dramatic change, certainly for a while, you know, not forever, hopefully. And that's something that can be really tricky, I think, for many women to juggle, because suddenly they're thinking about all these things, not just about the baby and taking care of the baby, but then, oh, what's happening with my partner, and I know we're not intimate anymore, and, you know, he, assuming heterosexual relationship, as you've said, you know, he might be upset by that, and it sounds like you're saying that the relationships were all positive. They reported they were positive, but then afterwards things changed, both in the sex life and in their relationship. Is that what you found with these women?
Yeah. So they were worried about that. Like, it's like I think because they didn't know what will happen actually.
Sure.
Because you know, when you want to be pregnant, when you have that, in that case, all those women have planned with the partner to be pregnant. So it was like a desire to start a family, and it was the first baby for everyone, for all of them. And so I think it was like, you know, that joy to think, we are going to be parents, and we are going to build our own family. It's our time, and so they enjoy to have sex and to construct that new project. And then there is the pregnancy. Okay, it's wonderful. Usually women feel like, not all of them, but usually they feel like it's amazing to be pregnant. It's a new experience. You feel empowered and blah, blah, blah. And then you see your healthcare providers, and it's about the baby and the baby and the baby. And how do you feel? But the baby, it's the most important. It's the focus. And this is very important. I'm not saying that is not, not at all. But yeah, the focus is really the baby, and then which kind of method of birth would you like? So it's better to try to plan your childbirth. Okay, so you have this class, maybe or maybe not. It depends of everyone. But yeah, there is all these things around the baby and the childbirth, and then the postpartum arrives, and and nothing. It's like good luck. Congratulations.
Off you
You
go.
have a wonderful baby. Now you can go home and enjoy your new life.
Yeah, that's exactly it.
And they don't know that they will experience changes. Obviously you can imagine that your
Sure.
life will change. Obviously you can think, yeah, I am going to be a mom, so I will put more priorities on different things than before. I am aware about that. We are going to be three, so we have to find a new organization.
Yep.
But then what they don't know that the relationship will change, and sexuality is part of our well-being, so it's part of our health. That's why we talk about sexual health.
Yep.
Because you have to be, well, I mean, everyone experience and live their own sexuality, but it's important to feel on the same page, and you feel comfortable and you feel confident with your partner, and your body as well. You have to feel confident with your body, and it's important to talk about that. And if you keep everything inside you and you feel, oh, I have to do that for my partner because they want that and they want sex, and so it won't work. Because if you don't talk about that with your partner and you force you to do something, it won't work. And sexuality is very, very important in everyone's life. And
Did with the women that you spoke to, so you mentioned like certainly decreased in desire and arousal. Did any of them talk about, I'm not sure how their births went, and any changes to their anatomy, if they'd had traumatic births or tearing or any pelvic kind of issues, like, and the body changes as well, like, your tummy afterwards, or your boobs, and are you breastfeeding, and what about that? Was there any women talking about that?
Yeah, so during the interview, there was like a main question about childbirth, just to understand a little bit more about the method of birth and the impact that can have on sexual health.
Yeah.
It was awesome because I had half and a half C-section and
really interesting.
and vaginal birth. So it was very interesting because as it was the first child, what they said is, I don't know the other one.
Yep.
What I know is I had a C-section. At the beginning, it was like, a little bit strange, but finally it was okay. And the ones who told me I had vaginal birth told me the same. Oh, I'm happy with that because I think a C-section could be worse. And actually, I am okay. So I cannot compare because for their own experience, it was okay.
Yeah.
Obviously I didn't really talk about that in my thesis because it wasn't really my focus on the method of birth. But what I can say, it doesn't show any difference because all of them said low sexual desire.
Right.
Obviously not some of them talk about vaginal dryness, but some had C-section, some had vaginal birth.
Yeah.
So,
and they both experienced that. Some of them both experienced the dryness.
My thesis focused more on sexual desire, low sexual desire, because it was the main, sexual issues that all women experience. So in a qualitative research, you have to focus on the main one. So obviously, some of them said, at the beginning it was painful when we had sexual intercourse, so we wait a little bit more. Some of them talk about the vaginal dryness, but not all of them. What else? The breastfeeding, I think all of them was breastfeeding. And that can be related. For example, vaginal dryness and breastfeeding. Obviously, I'm not midwife. I'm not a doctor, and I know that. But according to different studies that I have read and some books that I read, apparently breastfeeding and vaginal dryness can be related due to the hormone changes.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah.
Hormone changes. Yeah. So that can be a factor. So, for example, some of them said, I experienced that, but I didn't know to who I could talk about that. And so, for example, they were saying that I think it's very specific from Australia, but when you leave the hospital, then you have like three parents group, which is more known as mothers group, but actually it's parents group.
Yes. Yeah.
And a midwife comes like during the three first meeting, and they talk about like breastfeeding, how your baby sleep, how your baby eat. Maybe they talk about a little bit of postpartum depression, which is more at hospital, what I have understood. But then after they said, the good thing is that the group, you can keep that group further. After the 3 meeting with the midwife, you can keep going to see the moms, and that's very nice.
Yeah.
Because it's a support for women. But then their sexual health is not
discussed or not
discussed at all. So they were like some of them said it was one point of my thesis is like resilience. So what I have observed is that those women try to find by themselves some solutions. So that means the main solution was talking with the partner, so communication. It was a huge strategy, like a very important strategy in those relationships. So they communicate with the partner about how they felt and their body and etc. And then some of them find a solution on the internet, which again is when they told me that, it was like, it's awesome because they find by themselves, and I was like, that's the way you have to find solutions, But at the same time, I was like, we know that on the internet information are not accurate, and you never know if it's true or not. And you can find everything on the internet.
Very hit and miss, I think.
So that's why, again, I really would like to create like some, I don't know, some workshops, so like educational workshop about sexual health for pregnant and postpartum women, and to try, I don't know, during those group to come and talk about sexuality and to make the topic like more open. And if they feel they need to talk about that, they know where to go, and we can refer to like a sexologist such as or other like psychologists as well, or whatever, like
for sure. But just have it more as a something that's actually spoken about. Like if it's out there in the community and someone's coming and talking to women who are in parents groups or anything like that, then there's it's more of permission, I think, for women then to go, oh, okay, I can, it's okay, this is a thing. It's actually, this is a thing that I can go and do something about, rather than sort of, I think that it's awesome that many of them communicate with their partner, but then, like you said, sort of stumbling around the internet, just trying to find your own kind of solutions, and is this normal, and what do I do? It's such a minefield out there, and you might be lucky and find some good stuff, but you might not be as well. And then but the thing is, if there's you don't know what to do, if there's no information about it, you don't even know where to start from.
No. And the thing as well, so I wanted to know which kind of information they receive from the healthcare providers during the antenatal and postnatal visits, just to get like a big picture. And actually they told me that so they were like very grateful for all the information they receive about the baby's health, because it's very important that I say that, because I don't, but it's the main thing is like it's about a new life, so we have to be focused on that baby. But um, beyond of that, it was like they just talk about um, during the 6 weeks checkup, the 6 week
Yes.
postpartum
Yes.
checkup. They talk about the method of contraception.
Yeah.
So
Good
apparently,
point.
what they receive as information is like, oh, now you can resume sexual activity. Think about your method of contraception. And the other one was, oh yeah, to say, yeah, now it's the 6 week postpartum checkup. Congratulations. now, now your sex life can restart. And that's it.
And then that's it. That's kind of all
Yeah,
the.
all the information
It's,
that they received.
yeah.
And so it's like, you feel like firstly they miss the they miss like the occasion to talk about that, because they mention about method of contraception and you can resume your sex life, but they stop the
That's it.
conversation
Yep.
after that. That's it. So, and that's sad, because actually that's a good way to start a conversation about sexuality and sexual health, and to ask if they are okay or they feel. And with the body image is very important,
Body image.
because
Yeah. Yep.
you don't think about your body, or you will change after birth. You can
No.
imagine. I know you can know that, but you cannot imagine
Yep.
until that happen.
Yep.
And for example, some of them told me, oh, I still have my belly as I was pregnant, but I have my baby now, so why? Or for example, after childbirth, they had like a very painful sensation around the uterus, but because the uterus tried to reject the part of the placenta.
Yes. Yes.
The body going to work. It's not because you just gave birth and your baby is in your arms that it's finished. No, actually, your body's still trying to come back as before, and the size, and so you will bleed during maybe 6 weeks postpartum. You will have like some pain around the uterus and all these things, but they don't know why. Actually, so for example, they know, okay, they received some information like that will happen, but they don't give the reason why. They have to know. They have to know that it's natural. It's your body which is trying to come back as normal. And if you know, it's that actually. Okay. So I don't know. Once you know the reasons, it's okay. You can manage that. I think it's what I think. Obviously, is
I agree. I think it's a very human thing to kind of want to know why, and they might, yes, like you said, they say, well, this is going to happen. And you're like, oh, okay, but like, why? What if you have a deeper understanding and go, oh, my body's just trying to kind of get back to equilibrium. And I've certainly heard, or years ago, I heard this, I think through midwives and stuff, that it takes about 2 years for a body to sort of come back to sort of normal, new normal, how it was before, with the pregnancy, the labor, the birth, breastfeeding, hormonal changes. Like that's quite a long time. But it makes sense, I guess. It's a massive event on the body. Everything changes, and psychologically too, of course.
For example, when I think as well about this kind of information that, now you are 6 weeks postpartum, so you can resume your sex life. Actually, well, firstly, we should know why we can and not before. Why before the 6 weeks I cannot, and apart from the 6 week I can. Is like there is
it's just a magic number, very, kind of. Yeah,
because some of them say, oh, my husband, because it was like all married women, my husband think, once it's the 6 weeks postpartum, we can have our sex life back. So they were like waiting the date. It's like things that you
That's
put
a lot
in
of pressure.
mind. Yeah. And so, for example, those recommendation is it's okay to, it's important to talk about that. But as well, it's important to say, okay, it's not like a standard. It's like we say that after 6 weeks is better for different reasons, but then if you don't feel ready for that, just wait when your own body and your mind is ready for any kind of sexual activity. And I don't talk about only penetrative sex, but as well like any of sexual kind of but yeah, and yeah, it's important to say that if you are not ready, don't do it, and then just be aware about your own sensation and what you feel and what is right for you and for your partner as well. And yeah,
did some women feel like like with that 6 weeks, like a kind of pressure, or that they should, I want my partner to be happy and I'll just do something because, a sense of obligation? Or were they able to kind of not do that or talk to their partners about, excuse me, when they're ready? Because like you said, there's a physical ready, but the mind, the mentally and emotionally and psychologically being ready, especially for a woman, is so important. Our bodies are genuinely different to men, and we penetration for us, if we're talking about penetration, does start with the mind. You have to have this kind of connection and sense of safety and openness and all these things kinds of which it's not a tap that we can just kind of turn on. And if we're kind of still got this baby brain going on, or we're struggling with, I'm a mother now, and how does that identity fit with me as a woman or a sexual woman, that can be tricky, I think, to try and integrate into your new identity, or you're a new person. You've kind of, now you're a mother, and like, okay, can I still be sexy and sexual and have desire if I'm a mother? Like what? Like, yeah.
Yeah, what I remember, because my thesis, I wrote it last year, so I prefer to say that because I don't remember exactly all the details.
Sure.
But
stretch your brain back.
Yeah, what I remember is that they all of them told me that they were sexually active, so before the pregnancy, and they felt like that. The only thing is like the lack of intimacy, lack of time, sleep deprivation, all those factors affect a lot their own sexuality, and then the sexuality of their relationship with a partner. And so I think, and I hope I represent well what they said, but for me, they didn't felt like pressured about that, like the 6 weeks.
So they did, or they didn't?
They didn't. Sorry,
they didn't. Okay, that's good. Yeah.
They didn't feel like that because they communicate a lot with the partner, and the partner as well were aware about them. Like they understand what labor is, or where babies come from, and so
you'd hope so.
Some of them, I hope so. But some of them maybe have seen the baby going through the vagina, and this kind of image is like, wow. And so I believe that they were okay, because what I understood from those 12 women was like communication was part of their mode of communication in the relationship. So they were okay, because one of them told me, I am 6 months postpartum and I didn't resume yet any sexual activity, and my husband is aware about that, but I mean he's okay with that, and we talk about that a lot, and he understands why I want to wait, and he respects that as well. So I think
so important.
In those interviews, it was okay. Obviously, we know that it's not the case for everyone. So that's very important too. That, because your question is very good, because it's like some of them can feel pressured because the GP say or the gynecologist said that now I am ready, so I should be ready. Why I'm not? And they feel like more anxiety than more like more guilty. Some of them feel
Yeah.
guilty because one of the participants said, my mind was okay, I felt that sexual desire in my mind, but my body wasn't ready. So the mind and the body was disconnected, and she told me, I really want, and because for me it was very important for my relationship with my partner,
Yeah.
but my body didn't respond at any like a sensation like touch or anything.
Yeah. Oh, how
So some
frustrating.
of them said as well that they try to find solution on the internet. So for example, one of them find like lubricant
Yes. Yeah.
could be like a good help as well when you experience vaginal dryness.
For sure.
Some of them find like some sexologists, because even at the hospital, they don't tell you, oh, look, I have a list of psychologists or sexologists, or, someone who is specialized at least in sexual health.
Yep.
You can see that person. No, there is no
Nothing.
referral list or something like that. So
No.
they have to check by themselves
Yep.
on the internet.
Yeah.
So yeah.
It sounds like such a key theme, or one of the most important things is that communication and kind of the state of the relationship, and to be able to talk about those issues, like with that the mother you mentioned who was 6 months postpartum and was still not sexually active with her husband, but they clearly had been talking about that. And I think, I mean, that makes so much sense, and that can be easy or hard. I think as long as it sounds like having that really good open discussion, and in a safe kind of way where you can both, I don't know, talk about your frustrations perhaps, or that desire, like with the other one that you were saying, sort of in her mind she was ready, but her body just wasn't. And you can't, we can't switch that on. That's very hard. And the same for men. They can't just get just say get an erection and then boom. Maybe sometimes, but it has to be. That has to be all coming together, so to speak, for things
it's like that participant who say that her partner had sexual erection difficulties during the postpartum, and that's the thing as well, because they wanted both, but they just couldn't. And there are so many factors that can impact your mind and your body, and it's huge, and that's why it's very important to talk about it, because for example, those women told me, oh, the fact that we talk about it and now we know that we can see someone like a sexologist or psychologist who is specialized in sexology, they felt better. They felt like, oh, now I know that it will be easier. It will be easier to understand. And for the second baby, it will be maybe easier, because they will already anticipate what they can experience. Obviously, from one pregnancy to another, it can be very different, but at least you have an idea of how your body change and everything. So the last question of my thesis was like recommendations, and so I asked what kind of recommendations you could propose for the healthcare providers. And the two main ones was to talk about it during antenatal and postnatal visits. Sometimes they have like the prenatal classes or this kind of so they wanted the midwives or whoever who is doing the class talk about that, and to try to integrate the partner as well, because they were saying usually it's the women, the moms, who are there, and the partner is not, and sometimes some of them feel like rejected, and like it's all about women because it's the women who carry the baby. So so they make that point very like specific, like to try to integrate everyone, and like that we can open the conversation, because even if they don't talk about it during the class with everyone, at least they can hear other person, and to understand that they are not the only one, and we experience sometimes the same things, and then we can talk about that more more specifically. Second one was the brochures, like, you know, like a
Brochures,
little pamphlet, or I don't know,
yes.
like a flyer, or I don't know.
Yeah.
Because usually when you are you wait for your turn with your GP, or
Yes.
you know, in the waiting room, you have these brochures about breastfeeding, about I don't know, maybe about yoga classes, or I don't know.
Yeah, tons of
and
things.
so it will be nice. Yeah, it will be nice to have one talking about what expecting when you are expecting.
Yes.
For example, something
Yeah.
like sexually talking, like how your body change and how your partner can change, because it's not because the partner doesn't have the baby, doesn't carry the baby during the pregnancy, that he doesn't, well, I'm saying here, but they don't feel any changes, you know. It's like
and again, that sort of reminds me of what we were saying, I think at the beginning of this podcast, about there's just that lack of information out there. So it's not even like sitting in a waiting room in a brochure, or there's no discussions from a midwife or the GP or obstetrician or whoever. There's just kind of this silence, except what you can find on the internet. But even if it's just more like they were saying, just present, there was just a brochure or just a poster, you know, something, then you're like, oh yes, you're like, this is a part of it. I'm so glad. And then that opens up more doors, I think, and more willingness, because at least there's something. Because when I think there's nothing, you don't know where to start, and you're like, if there's nothing out there, does that mean no one else experiences this as a problem? And that's wrong, kind of thing. So that's a really interesting point they made, just to have something out there.
And as well, it's like, obviously I'm talking about that subject because it was my thesis, and I shared those moments with those women, and because I'm passionate about that topic, especially that topic about pregnancy and postpartum. So obviously for me, I'm talking like that, but I am aware as well that some healthcare providers might feel like embarrassed to talk about it, or maybe they don't have enough time to talk about sexual health during their visit, because we know that sometimes they have only 15 minutes to talk about everything. Some of them are not specialists in sexuality, or maybe they feel like, oh, it's maybe too intimate, maybe I don't know how to start the conversation with that person, because especially here in Paris, it's a multicultural city, so we can meet so many different persons from different countries and religion and culture, you know. So it's very important to be aware about that, and to make sure that when we start the conversation, we don't offend that person as well. So I suppose that some GP, obstetrician or midwives feel like maybe it's the right moment, or they look like the patient look maybe too tired, and maybe they feel like, oh no, I want to talk about that now. If they want it, maybe, you know, it's like
that's a good point.
So,
they might not know how to, and they don't want to offend, or the cultural kind of sensitivities. Sure.
So the brochure would be like a good start, actually, because if the patient see the brochure in the waiting room, and the healthcare provider has that brochure in their desk as well, might like sort of, oh, do you want we talk about that? Or if you don't want now, look, take that brochure, take it at home, think about it, and once you feel ready to think about your sexual health, please just come back, or give a call, or go on I don't know, in other clinic where they are more specialized about that, but just to make sure that they know they can talk about that. And you know,
and it kind of signals that, at least a brochure it's not much, but at least it's something, I think, and that's that message of permission, and it's okay, and that's a good point. Even if they don't want to talk about it now, it's like, well, you can just take it with you, or even if it's in like the little pack. I'm sure my sister had a baby fairly recently, and I'm sure she got some sort of pack in hospital with all these brochures for different, you know, breastfeeding this and all these products and stuff like that. and some stuff I'm pretty sure from the health department. So even in there, because eventually you do kind of flick through it when you have a spare few seconds kind of thing. But just that acknowledgement, I just having that as acknowledgement really that this is something to be also to be thinking about, which you probably already are, and not just 6 weeks, you can go for it, or what contraception, and often that comes up if you're breastfeeding. Oh, what contraception? But it's strange, really, that then there's no further conversation. Do you even feel like having sex? How are you feeling about your body? And of course, not every professional is going to go down that path and wants to or has the skills to. Of course not. But it still needs to be part of a language somewhere. It needs to be in the system somewhere. And it sounds like it's not yet, Yeah,
no. And for example, when we talk about method of contraception, that gives you the message that firstly you are in a heterosexuality with your partner. In a heterosexual relationship,
Yes.
Which is not the case with everyone. We
sure.
have to be aware that there is many sexual orientation and different way to have a baby. So just be aware with that as well. And then all women doesn't want to be on the pill.
Absolutely. Yep.
Why? Why there is so many other ways to try to avoid to be pregnant again during that period if you don't want. And another point that I wanted to make is I remember now is the conversation that one participant told me, for example, when you leave the hospital after birth, you get like so as you say, like a package of brochures and like a cream maybe for the nipples. I think.
Yeah, something like
that. I don't remember, but she told me, for example, they should like put some lubricant sample.
That's a good idea.
Some condoms.
Yeah, which again just puts it in the landscape. Then it puts it back on the agenda rather than like what you were just saying then before. These assumptions that I think are still made that you're in a relationship and you're in a heterosexual relationship. All these things that still go on in our society. I mean, I guess that's a much bigger conversation out there. I'm just mindful of the time, Marie, and we've been chatting for a whole hour.
Wow.
And I'm sure we could keep on talking about it. It's such an important topic. So I want to thank you so much for coming on and being part of our podcast and talking about this topic. It's just such, as you found, still so important but quite neglected subject. So I'm really grateful that you've done research on it and that you've been so willing to share it with us.
Thank you to you for your invitation, and I'm so glad I could share my thesis with you, and maybe I hope some people will hear the second podcast and maybe have like wonderful ideas to change our mind and to start to talk about more sexual health with pregnant and postpartum women and couples, and it will be awesome.
That would be great.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Listening to The Hidden World of Women, the podcast brought to you by Women's Health and Wellbeing Services. You can find us on Facebook, Instagram and YouTube by looking up Women's Health and Wellbeing Services. You can also find us at our website www.whws.org.au. Bye.